The morning sun cast long shadows through the tall windows of the county courthouse, but the light did nothing to ease the oppressive tension that filled courtroom 3B. 7-year-old Emma Peterson sat on a wooden bench in the witness waiting room, her small frame nearly swallowed by the adult-sized furniture. Her fingers gripped a worn teddy bear, its left ear missing, its brown fur matted from countless nights of desperate clutching. She stared at the floor tiles, counting them silently, her lips pressed together in a thin line that had become all too familiar to everyone who knew her. 6 months. It had been 6 months since that terrible October night when everything changed. 6 months since Emma had spoken a single word to anyone, not to the parade of therapists who tried every technique in their professional arsenal, not to the gentle-voiced investigators who'd shown her anatomical dolls and asked her to point to pictures. Not even to her mother, Jennifer, who had spent countless nights lying beside Emma's bed, whispering reassurances into the darkness, begging for just one word, one syllable, any sign that her daughter was still in there somewhere. The custody battle between Jennifer and David Peterson had dragged on for 3 agonizing months, and it had become the most contentious case Judge Harrison Blackwell had presided over in his 27 years on the bench. Both parents hurled accusations at each other with a vitriol that made even seasoned court reporters uncomfortable. David claimed Jennifer was an unfit mother who neglected Emma. Jennifer insisted David was manipulative and controlling, though she couldn't prove it. And caught in the middle was a silent little girl who held all the answers but refused, or couldn't, share them. Judge Blackwell leaned back in his leather chair in his private chambers, rubbing his tired eyes. The preliminary hearing was scheduled to begin in less than an hour, and he had serious doubts about allowing Emma to take the stand. What was the point? The child hadn't communicated anything meaningful in half a year. Every evaluation, every psychological assessment, every attempted interview had yielded nothing. Just silence and those haunted blue eyes that seemed to look right through people. "She's not ready, Your Honor," Dr. Patricia Chen, the court-appointed child psychologist, had argued just yesterday. Forcing her to testify could cause additional trauma. The girl is already exhibiting signs of severe anxiety and possible PTSD. We don't even know what she witnessed or experienced. But both attorneys had pushed for Emma's testimony. David Peterson's lawyer, Marcus Reed, a sharp-dressed man with slick-back hair and an unsettling smile, insisted that Emma needed to be heard. "If the child has nothing to hide, surely she can appear in court," he'd argued smoothly. Jennifer's attorney, the determined Maria Santos, agreed for different reasons. She believed Emma's presence alone would speak volumes, even without words. In the waiting room, social worker Linda Martinez sat beside Emma, occasionally glancing at the child with a mixture of compassion and frustration. Linda had worked with traumatized children for 15 years, but Emma's case haunted her. There was something about the way the girl's silence felt deliberate, purposeful, as if she were protecting a secret so dangerous that speaking it aloud would shatter her world completely. "Would you like some water, sweetie?" Linda asked softly, already knowing there would be no response. Emma didn't even blink. The door opened, and Jennifer Peterson entered, her face pale and drawn. She'd lost 20 pounds since the separation, her once vibrant energy replaced by hollow exhaustion. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights spent wondering what had happened to her daughter, to her life, to everything she'd built. "Baby," Jennifer whispered, kneeling before Emma. She reached out to touch her daughter's hand, but Emma flinched almost imperceptibly. Jennifer's hand froze in midair and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Even her own daughter seemed afraid of her now. "I love you," Jennifer breathed. "No matter what happens today, I love you so much." Emma's fingers tightened around the teddy bear, but her gaze remained fixed on those floor tiles. Counting, always counting. Across the courthouse, in the main lobby, Detective Sarah Matthews was having a conversation that would change everything. She stood beside her partner of 6 years, not the human kind, but the four-legged kind. Rex, A magnificent German shepherd with intelligent amber eyes and a calm demeanor that could soothe even the most agitated individuals, sat obediently at her heel. His vest clearly identified him as a certified therapy and police service dog. "I still don't understand why they called us," Detective Matthews said into her phone, speaking with her supervisor. "The custody division doesn't usually request K-9 assistance, especially not therapy dogs." "Judge Blackwell specifically asked for Rex," her supervisor explained. "Apparently, one of the victim advocates suggested it. The child witness is severely traumatized and nonverbal. Their hopping Rex's presence might provide some comfort during testimony. It's a long shot, Sarah, but the judge is willing to try anything at this point." Sarah looked down at Rex, who gazed back at her with that steady, knowing look that always seemed to say he understood far more than any dog should. They'd worked together on dozens of cases, domestic violence situations, child abuse investigations, even a few hostage negotiations where Rex's calm presence had helped de-escalate volatile situations. He had an uncanny ability to connect with traumatized individuals, particularly children. Something about his patient, non-judgmental presence allowed people to feel safe in ways they couldn't with humans. "All right," Sarah agreed. "We'll do what we can." She clipped Rex's leash and headed toward the elevators, unaware that in a few minutes everything about this case would transform. Rex trotted beside her, his nails clicking on the marble floor, his ears alert but relaxed. If dogs could sense the weight of moments, Rex gave no indication. He simply walked forward with purpose, as he always did, ready to serve. In the courtroom, David Peterson sat at the defense table, his posture relaxed, almost cocky. He was a handsome man, chiseled features, expensive suit, perfect teeth that flashed when he smiled at the jury. But there was something unsettling about his confidence, something that made Jennifer's attorney, Maria Santos, deeply uncomfortable. He acted like a man who knew he'd already won. Marcus Reed leaned over and whispered something to David, who smirked and nodded. Whatever they were discussing, it clearly amused them both. The bailiff's voice echoed through the chamber. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harrison Blackwell." The preliminaries began, procedural matters, motions, the formal reading of the case details. But everyone in that courtroom knew what the real moment would be, when a silent 7-year-old girl would be led to the witness stand, expected to provide testimony she had no intention of giving. Outside the courtroom doors, Detective Matthews and Rex waited. Sarah could hear the muffled voices from inside, the formal language of legal proceedings. She looked down at Rex one more time. "Ready, boy?" she asked quietly. Rex's tail wagged once, a simple, confident movement. He was ready. What none of them knew, not the judge, not the attorneys, not the worried mother or the smug father, was that in just a few minutes, Emma Peterson would do something she hadn't done in 6 months. And when she did, the careful lies and buried secrets would begin to unravel, thread by thread, until the entire ugly truth lay exposed. It would all begin with a little girl and a dog, and nothing would ever be the same again. The witness preparation room was sterile and uninviting, white walls, fluorescent lighting, a rectangular table with uncomfortable plastic chairs, and a single window with blinds drawn tight. It was designed to be neutral, non-threatening, but to Emma Peterson, being led through that doorway felt like entering a trap. Social worker Linda Martinez guided her gently by the shoulder, while Dr. Patricia Chen followed close behind, clipboard in hand, already making mental notes about the child's body language. "Just have a seat here, Emma," Linda said softly, pulling out a chair. "We're just going to talk for a little bit before we go into the courtroom. Is that okay?" Emma didn't respond. She climbed onto the chair, her teddy bear clutched against her chest, and immediately resumed her usual position, eyes down, jaw set, completely withdrawn into herself. Maria Santos, Jennifer's attorney, entered next, followed by a victim advocate named Rebecca Torres. They'd been through this routine before, multiple times in fact, and each attempt had ended the same way. Silence. No matter how gentle their approach, no matter what techniques they tried, Emma remained locked inside herself. "Emma, I know this is scary," Maria began, her voice warm and encouraging. "But you're very brave for being here. We just want to help your mommy and you. Nobody here is going to hurt you. You can take all the time you need." Dr. Chen pulled out some coloring books and crayons, placing them on the table. "Would you like to draw something while we talk? Sometimes that makes things easier." Emma stared at the blank page but didn't reach for the crayons. The adults exchanged worried glances. Rebecca checked her watch. They had maybe 20 minutes before Judge Blackwell would demand an update on whether Emma would be able to testify at all. The pressure was mounting, and everyone in that room could feel it. That's when Detective Sarah Matthews knocked on the door, then opened it slowly. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I was told to bring Rex to this room for emotional support during the testimony preparation." Yes, come in," Dr. Chen said, standing up with visible relief. She'd been the one to suggest the therapy dog after reading about successful cases in other jurisdictions. Where hopping his presence might help Emma feel more comfortable. Sarah entered with Rex walking calmly at her side. The German Shepherd was magnificent, powerful but gentle, with alert amber eyes that seemed to take in everything. His therapy dog vest was clearly visible, and he moved with the practiced ease of a dog who'd been in countless stressful situations before. "I'll just have him settle in the corner here," Sarah explained, guiding Rex to a spot away from the table. "He won't approach unless she wants him to. That's how we usually do it. Let the child come to him when they're ready." Rex laid down on the floor, his head resting on his paws, looking completely relaxed. To anyone watching, he appeared to be just resting, but Sarah knew better. Rex was working, assessing the room, the people, the energy. He was particularly focused on the small girl at the table who hadn't looked up once since they'd entered. The adults resumed their attempts to engage Emma. Maria tried asking simple yes or no questions. Dr. Chen attempted play therapy techniques. Linda offered snacks and juice, but Emma remained completely unresponsive, locked in her private fortress of silence. What none of them noticed, because they were all so focused on the child, was the subtle change in Emma's posture the moment Rex had entered. Her fingers, which had been clutching the teddy bear with white-knuckled intensity, had loosened slightly. Her breathing, shallow and rapid, had slowed just a fraction, and her eyes, which had been determinedly fixed on the table, had flickered once, just once, toward the corner where the German Shepherd lay. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The conversation continued around Emma, voices rising and falling with increasing desperation. They were running out of time, and everyone knew it. "Maybe we should take a break," Rebecca suggested finally. "Let her decompress for a few minutes before we try again." "Agreed," Dr. Chen sighed, making another note on her clipboard. "This isn't working. We're just adding to her stress." The adults moved toward the door, clustering together to discuss their next approach in hushed tones. Sarah started to follow them, glancing back at Rex with a subtle hand signal that meant stay. That's when it happened. Emma slid off her chair, so quietly that no one heard the movement. She left her teddy bear on the table, something she never did, and she walked, step by careful step, across the room toward Rex. Sarah noticed first. She froze mid-sentence, her hand outstretched to touch the doorknob, her eyes wide. She caught Dr. Chen's attention with a gentle tap on the arm, then pointed wordlessly at Emma. Everyone turned, collectively holding their breath. Emma stood about 3 feet from Rex, her small hands clasped in front of her, studying the dog with an intensity she'd shown nothing else since arriving at the courthouse. Rex, to his credit, remained perfectly still, though his ears had perked up slightly, alert to her presence. Slowly, so slowly that it seemed to take forever, Emma took another step forward. Then another. until she was standing right beside Rex, close enough to touch him. The adults were statues, afraid that any movement, any sound, would shatter whatever fragile connection was forming. Emma knelt down on the floor, her small dress pooling around her. Her hand reached out, trembling, and touched the top of Rex's head. The dog didn't move, didn't react, just continued his patient waiting. Then Emma's hand slid down to his neck, then to his side, until she was running her fingers through his thick fur. And then, impossibly, miraculously, Emma leaned forward and pressed her face against Rex's shoulder. Her arms wrapped around the dog's neck, and her whole body seemed to collapse against him. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She'd seen Rex work magic before, but this was something else entirely. "Good boy," Sarah whispered, so softly it was barely audible. "Good boy, Rex." For a long moment, nothing happened. Emma simply held onto Rex like he was a life raft in a stormy sea. The dog remained steady, solid, unmoving except for the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. Then Maria Santos heard it, a sound so quiet she thought she'd imagined it, a whisper coming from Emma. Dr. Chen heard it too. Her eyes widened and she took an instinctive step forward, but Sarah's hand shot out, stopping her. "Don't," Sarah mouthed. "Let her be." Emma's lips were moving against Rex's fur, and sounds, actual words, were coming out. Her voice was hoarse from disuse, broken and halting, but they were unmistakably words. He said they'd hurt Mommy." Emma breathed into Rex's ear, so quietly that only those standing very close could hear. "He said, if I told, Mommy would go away forever." The room felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of it. "He watches her," Emma continued, her voice cracking with emotion. "He watches Mommy all the time, even when she doesn't know. He showed me the videos and said this is what happens to people who talk to police." Maria Santos's hand flew to her mouth. Dr. Chen's clipboard clattered to the floor. Linda Martinez felt her legs go weak and had to lean against the wall for support. Emma was talking. After 6 months of silence, she was finally talking. But what she was saying was more horrifying than anyone had imagined. Sarah crouched down slowly, making herself small and non-threatening. "Emma," she said gently, "can you tell Rex more? He's a very good listener. He keeps secrets safe." Emma nodded against Rex's fur, tears now streaming down her face. "Daddy has a special room," she whispered. "In the basement, behind the water heater. He said I could never tell anyone about the room, never ever, or else." Her voice broke completely, and she began to sob, the first real crying anyone had witnessed from her in months. Rex, with the instinct of a trained therapy dog, shifted slightly, allowing Emma to bury her face deeper into his fur, giving her a safe space to release all the fear and pain she'd been holding inside. Dr. Chen was already on her phone, stepping into the hallway. Maria Santos grabbed her legal pad, writing frantically. Rebecca Torres was crying openly, overwhelmed by the breakthrough they were witnessing. But Sarah Matthews just stayed crouched beside Emma and Rex, one hand gently resting on the child's back, the other stroking her dog's head. "You're safe now," Sarah whispered. "You're safe, and Rex is here, and nobody is going to hurt you or your mommy. You're so brave, Emma, so incredibly brave." Emma continued to whisper to Rex, fragments of sentences, broken confessions, pieces of a nightmare she'd been forced to carry alone. The dog absorbed it all with infinite patience, never moving, never judging, just being present in the way only an animal can be. Outside in the hallway, Dr. Chen's urgent phone conversation could be heard. "Judge Blackwell, we need to delay the hearing immediately. We have a situation. The child is talking. Yes, talking. And what she's saying. Your Honor, I think we need to call the police. The detective is already here with the therapy dog, but we need investigators. Now." Inside the preparation room, Emma Peterson continued to unburden herself to the one creature in the courthouse who made her feel safe enough to break her silence. And with every whispered word, The case that had seemed so straightforward began to reveal itself as something far darker and more complex than anyone had anticipated. The truth, after 6 months of hiding, was finally beginning to emerge, and it would change everything. The custody hearing was postponed indefinitely. Judge Blackwell made the decision within 15 minutes of receiving Dr. Chen's frantic phone call. What had started as a bitter divorce case had suddenly taken on the dimensions of a potential criminal investigation. The judge cleared his courtroom, sent the attorneys home with strict gag orders, and authorized Detective Matthews to establish what he called a safe communication environment for Emma Peterson. For the next 48 hours, a small team of specialists worked around the clock in a child advocacy center 3 blocks from the courthouse. The center was designed specifically for situations like this: warm lighting, comfortable furniture, toys and books scattered naturally around the rooms, and most importantly, one-way observation glass that allowed investigators and psychologists to monitor Emma's disclosures without overwhelming her with adult presence. Emma wouldn't talk to any of them directly. She'd tried once, when a kind-faced child forensic interviewer named Amanda Green attempted to ask her questions, but Emma's throat had closed up immediately, her eyes going wide with panic. Within seconds, she'd retreated back into that terrifying silence, her small body beginning to shake with fear. But she would talk to Rex. Detective Sarah Matthews had never seen anything quite like it. She'd worked with therapy dogs for years, seen them comfort trauma victims and help people through crisis situations, but the bond between Emma and Rex was something beyond her experience. It was as if the 7-year-old had found the only confidant in the world she trusted completely. So they adjusted their approach. Sarah and Rex would sit with Emma in the comfortable observation room, just the 3 of them. No questions, no pressure, just quiet companionship. And slowly, gradually, Emma would lean against Rex's warm bulk and begin to whisper her secrets into his fur. Behind the one-way glass, a team assembled like something from a major crimes task force. Detective Matthews's supervisor, Lieutenant Frank Morrison, stood with his arms crossed, his face growing darker with each revelation. FBI Special Agent Diana Reeves had been called in due to potential federal crimes. Dr. Chen monitored Emma's psychological state. Maria Santos represented Jennifer's interests. And 2 specialists from the Cyber Crimes Unit, Officers Kevin Park and Sarah Jensen, recorded every word, already building what they suspected would become a major case. "Tell Rex about the room again," Sarah said gently, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Emma and the dog. "The special room in Daddy's basement. Can you describe it for Rex?" Emma's fingers knotted in Rex's fur, and she pressed her face against his neck. The dog remained perfectly still, his breathing slow and steady, a living meditation aid for a traumatized child. "It's behind the water heater," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible even in the quiet room. "You have to move the big box of Christmas decorations and then there's a door. But it doesn't look like a door. It's metal and it blends in with the wall. Daddy said it's fireproof." Behind the glass, Officer Park was already typing rapidly, making detailed notes. Agent Reeves spoke quietly into her phone, arranging for search warrants and a forensic team. "What's inside the room, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice neutral and calm. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her breathing becoming faster. Rex sensed the change immediately and shifted slightly, pressing closer to her. The dog's calm seemed to transfer to Emma, and her breathing slowed again. "Computers," she finally said. "Lots of them, and screens on the wall, 6 screens, maybe 7, I don't remember exactly." She paused, swallowing hard. "They show Mommy's house." Sarah felt her own heartbeat accelerate, but she kept her expression neutral. "Rex is listening," she said softly. "You're doing so good, Emma, so brave." "Daddy showed me once," Emma continued, tears beginning to stream down her face. "He said he could see Mommy all the time, even when she thought she was alone. He showed me videos of her in the kitchen, in her bedroom, in the bathroom. Her voice cracked. He said this is what happens when people try to leave him. He said he always knows everything. Behind the glass, Maria Santos had gone pale. Jennifer Peterson, watching from a separate room via closed-circuit feed, had collapsed into a chair, sobbing. The invasion of privacy was staggering, but it explained so much. David's uncanny knowledge of Jennifer's schedule, his ability to show up at unexpected times, his confidence in the custody proceedings. "Did Daddy say anything else about watching Mommy?" Sarah prompted gently. Emma nodded against Rex's fur. "He showed me papers too, bank papers. He said Mommy was stupid and didn't know how to take care of money. He said he was teaching her a lesson by taking it." She paused, her small voice growing even quieter. "He said if I ever told anyone about the room or the computers or the money, something bad would happen to Mommy. He said people who talk to police have accidents." Lieutenant Morrison's jaw clenched. This wasn't just surveillance and financial fraud. This was witness intimidation of a child. Every law enforcement officer in that observation room knew they were watching a little girl confess that she'd been terrorized into silence by her own father. "Rex wants to know," Sarah said carefully, "if Daddy ever hurt you or Mommy." Emma's whole body tensed. For a moment, Sarah thought she'd pushed too far, that Emma would retreat back into silence. But then the child spoke again, her voice hollow. "He grabbed Mommy's arm once, twisted it really hard. I heard her cry. He said if she told anyone, if she went to the police, he'd make sure she never saw me again. He said he had videos of her doing bad things, even though she didn't do bad things. He said he could make people believe anything he wanted." Agent Reeves was already on her phone again, her voice tight with controlled anger as she coordinated with federal prosecutors. "And the night you stopped talking, Emma," Sarah said, her heart breaking for this child. "Can you tell Rex what happened that night?" Emma began to sob openly now, her small body shaking. Rex, with the perfect instincts of a trained therapy dog, carefully rolled onto his side and let Emma curl against his belly, giving her something solid to hold onto. "I was staying at Daddy's house," Emma choked out between sobs. "He got angry because the judge was asking too many questions. He took me down to the room and showed me all the screens again. He showed me videos of Mommy sleeping and Mommy talking on the phone and Mommy crying. Then she stopped, struggling to breathe. Then he played a video of a car accident, a really bad one. He said that's what happens to people who don't listen to him. He said if I told anyone about the room, Mommy would have an accident just like that." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "What did you do then, sweetheart?" "I promised I wouldn't tell," Emma whispered. "I promised and promised. And then I decided I wouldn't talk at all because if I didn't talk to anyone, I couldn't accidentally tell. I thought if I just stopped talking completely, Mommy would be safe." The observation room was silent except for the quiet sound of Officer Parks typing. Every adult present was struggling with their emotions: rage at David Peterson, heartbreak for Emma, admiration for her misguided attempt to protect her mother through silence. Dr. Chen spoke quietly into the intercom system connected to Sarah's earpiece. "We need to take a break. Emma's showing signs of extreme stress. Let her rest." But Emma wasn't finished. She clutched Rex tighter and continued speaking, the words pouring out now like water from a broken dam. "There's more," she said urgently. "Daddy has friends who come to the house late at night. They talk about money and banks and other people's names. I heard them once say something about stealing. I didn't understand it all, but Daddy got really mad when he found out I heard. He said children who eavesdrop end up in foster care where nobody loves them." Behind the glass, Agent Reeves's eyes lit up. Financial fraud conspiracy. This was expanding beyond a custody case into something federal. "Rex is proud of you," Sarah said softly, reaching over to stroke both Emma and the dog. "You're helping your mommy so much by telling Rex these things. You're the bravest girl I've ever met." Emma pulled back slightly, looking at Rex's gentle face. "Will Mommy be safe now?" she asked, her voice small and desperate. "If I told, will Daddy hurt her?" Sarah's heart clenched. This was the question Emma had been carrying for 6 months, the fear that had stolen her voice and trapped her in silence. "Your mommy is safe," Sarah said firmly. "We have police officers watching her right now. And now that you've told us about the room and the computers, we're going to make sure your daddy can't hurt anyone ever again. You did the right thing, Emma. You saved your mommy by being brave enough to talk to Rex." Emma buried her face in Rex's fur one more time. "Thank you, Rex," she whispered. "Thank you for listening." Behind the observation glass, Lieutenant Morrison was already issuing orders. "I want that search warrant executed immediately. Full forensic team. I want every hard drive, every device, every piece of paper in that basement room seized. And I want David Peterson picked up for questioning within the hour." Agent Reeves nodded. "I'm calling in our digital forensics unit from the regional office. If there's evidence of financial crimes, we'll find it." Dr. Chen made more notes, already planning the therapeutic support Emma would need. Maria Santos was on her phone with Jennifer, trying to explain through both their tears that Emma's nightmare might finally be ending. In the observation room, Emma had fallen asleep against Rex's side, exhausted from the emotional toll of finally releasing her burden. The dog remained awake and alert, his head resting protectively near the child, watching over her as she slept. Detective Sarah Matthews sat quietly, one hand resting on Rex's head, the other gently touching Emma's shoulder. In her 15 years as a police officer, she'd worked hundreds of cases. But she knew this one, this little girl and this incredible dog, would stay with her forever. The secrets had been whispered. The truth was finally emerging. And now the real work would begin. The search warrant was signed by Judge Blackwell at 3:47 p.m. and by 4:15 p.m., a convoy of law enforcement vehicles descended on David Peterson's upscale suburban home like an invading army. 3 black SUVs from the FBI's Cyber Crimes Division, 2 police cruisers, a forensics van, and an unmarked sedan carrying Detective Sarah Matthews, who had insisted on being present for the execution of the warrant, even though Rex and Emma were safely back at the Advocacy Center. David Peterson's house was a beautiful 2-story colonial in an expensive neighborhood, manicured lawn, 3-car garage, the kind of place that screamed success and respectability. Neighbors peered out from behind curtains as FBI agents in windbreakers and local police officers approached the front door. Nobody on this quiet street could imagine what secrets lay hidden behind those pristine walls. Lieutenant Morrison rang the doorbell. Once, twice. No answer. He nodded to the officer beside him, who stepped forward with the battering ram they'd brought as a precaution. "David Peterson, this is the police. We have a warrant to search these premises. Open the door now." Still nothing. Morrison glanced at Agent Reeves, who nodded. "Do it." The battering ram slammed into the door once, and the lock gave way. Officers poured into the house, weapons drawn, clearing each room with practiced efficiency. But David wasn't home. A quick check of the garage revealed his BMW was gone. He'd either been tipped off or was simply out running errands, unaware that his carefully constructed house of cards was about to collapse. "Basement," Morrison called out. "According to the child's statement, the hidden room is in the basement behind the water heater. Move." The basement stairs creaked as 8 officers descended into the finished lower level. It looked ordinary. A home gym with a treadmill and weight bench, a large screen TV, a sectional sofa, some storage shelves lined with boxes. Everything normal, everything innocent. Officer Kevin Park from the Cyber Crimes Unit pulled out his tablet, reviewing the detailed notes from Emma's interview. She said we need to move the box of Christmas decorations first. Large box, near the water heater. They found it exactly where Emma had described. A large plastic storage container labeled Christmas decorations in neat handwriting. It took 2 officers to move it, and behind it, they could see the industrial water heater mounted against the concrete wall. "I don't see any door," one officer said, running his hands along the wall. Agent Reeves stepped forward, pulling out a small flashlight and examining the wall carefully. "Look here," she said, pointing to an almost invisible seam in what appeared to be a metal utility panel. "This isn't standard. This is custom work." Sarah Matthews crouched down, studying the panel's edges. "There has to be a release mechanism. A 7-year-old said it looked like a door but didn't look like a door. Something not obvious." Officer Park examined the water heater itself, running his hands along its base. His fingers caught on something, a small metal lever disguised as a drain valve. "I think I've got it." He pulled the lever, and with a soft hydraulic hiss, the metal panel swung inward, revealing a doorway. Beyond it was darkness. "Jesus Christ," Morrison breathed. The officers clicked on their flashlights, illuminating what lay beyond. Emma hadn't exaggerated. If anything, she'd undersold it. The hidden room was approximately 15 feet by 12 feet, its walls lined with expensive soundproofing foam. And filling that space was a surveillance operation that belonged in a spy thriller, not a suburban basement. 7 monitors mounted on the main wall, each one currently dark. Below them, a sophisticated computer system with multiple towers, enough processing power for a small business. 2 desks covered with external hard drives, labeled with dates going back 3 years. Filing cabinets. A wall of technical equipment, receivers, transmitters, devices the officers couldn't immediately identify. "Don't touch anything yet," Agent Reeves commanded. "We need photos of everything in its original position. Park, Jensen, start documenting. I want a complete inventory before we move a single item." The cybercrime specialists went to work, their cameras flashing as they documented every angle of the room. Sarah Matthews stood in the doorway, feeling sick. Emma had been brought down here. A 7-year-old child had been forced to stand in this room while her father terrorized her with surveillance footage of her own mother. "There's a log book," Officer Jensen called out, carefully lifting a leather-bound notebook from one of the desks using gloved hands. She opened it, scanning the pages. "Oh my God, this is meticulous. Dates, times, activities observed. He's been documenting Jennifer Peterson's every move for years." Agent Reeves moved to look over her shoulder, reading entries at random. March 15, 2023, subject left for work at 8:17 a.m. Returned at 6:43 p.m. with groceries. Phone call with mother 7:15-7:52 p.m. Discussed filing for divorce. Recording archived. "This is..." She trailed off, unable to find words adequate to describe the obsessive violation they were witnessing. Lieutenant Morrison was examining the wall of equipment. "These are professional-grade receivers, military spec in some cases. How the hell did he get access to this kind of technology?" "More importantly," Sarah said quietly, "where are the cameras? If he's receiving feeds, there are cameras installed somewhere. In Jennifer Peterson's house." Officer Park had booted up one of the computers using a forensic startup protocol that prevented any data from being altered. The monitors flickered to life, and everyone in the room went silent. Live feeds, 6 different cameras all showing various rooms in what was clearly Jennifer's home. Kitchen, living room, master bedroom, Emma's bedroom, bathroom, even the garage. "She's being watched right now," Sarah said, her voice tight with fury. "Right this second he can see her." Agent Reeves was already on her phone. "This is Special Agent Diana Reeves. I need an immediate tactical team sent to..." She grabbed Jennifer's address from Maria Santos's earlier messages. 4782 Oakwood Drive. "We have active surveillance devices that need to be swept and removed. The victim may be in immediate danger if the suspect realizes we've found his operation." Morrison pointed to another monitor, this one showing a different location entirely. That's not Jennifer's house. That's someone else's home. Park leaned in, checking the label on the corresponding hard drive. Sarah Mitchell, 1247 Pine Street. There are at least 4 other names listed here. He's been surveilling multiple women. The scope of David Peterson's crimes was expanding by the minute. This wasn't just about his ex-wife. This was a pattern predator who'd been stalking multiple victims. Officer Jensen opened one of the filing cabinets, pulling out a folder. Financial documents, bank statements, credit card records, social security numbers. Not just Jennifer's, there are at least a dozen different people's information here. She flipped through more pages, her expression growing darker. Transaction records. He's been moving money. Lots of money. These look like shell company transfers. Agent Reeves moved to examine the documents. Her expertise in white-collar crime immediately recognized what they were seeing. This is systematic fraud. He's been embezzling from multiple accounts. Conservative estimate. We're looking at somewhere between $3 and $5 million over a 3-year period. Sarah felt dizzy. Emma had known. A 7-year-old child had carried the knowledge of all this, the surveillance, the theft, the obsessive stalking, and had been threatened into silence. The psychological damage must have been catastrophic. "Here's another log," Park called out, opening a second notebook. "This one's different. It's like a journal, personal notes." He began reading aloud, his voice flat with disgust. "Jennifer thinks she can leave me. She doesn't understand that I own her. I see everything she does, every phone call, every shower, every moment she thinks she's alone. She'll never be free of me. None of them will." The room fell silent except for the quiet whir of computer fans and the clicking of cameras documenting the evidence. Morrison's phone rang, breaking the tension. He answered, listened for a moment, then his expression hardened. "Copy that. Keep me posted." He hung up and addressed the room. "David Peterson just tried to board a flight to Costa Rica at the airport. TSA flagged his passport based on the bolo we put out. He's in custody." A collective exhale of relief swept through the room. "Good," Agent Reeves said coldly. "Because when he sees what we found here, he's going to wish he'd made that flight. Park Jensen, I want every hard drive, every device, every piece of paper in this room cataloged and seized. Morrison, we need to coordinate with your local PD on the physical evidence. Matthews," she turned to Sarah, "that little girl saved more than just herself and her mother today. If even half of what's in this room is actionable evidence, we're looking at multiple victims who had no idea they were being watched and robbed." Sarah nodded, thinking of Emma sleeping peacefully next to Rex. She's a hero, she just doesn't know it yet. The forensics team worked through the night, carefully removing every piece of equipment, every document, every electronic device. The hard drives alone numbered 47, containing an estimated 18 terabytes of data, video footage, financial records, personal information, communications logs. It would take months to sort through it all. By dawn, David Peterson's hidden surveillance room had been completely dismantled, its contents now secured in evidence lockers. The secret chamber that had allowed him to terrorize his ex-wife and stalk other victims was now just an empty concrete space lined with soundproofing foam, a monument to obsession and control, now stripped of its power. In an interrogation room across town, David Peterson sat handcuffed to a table, his expensive suit rumpled, his confident smirk long gone. He'd asked for a lawyer immediately, but his eyes had gone hollow when Agent Reeves calmly listed what they'd found in his basement. The trial that was supposed to be about custody would never happen. David Peterson was facing federal charges for wire fraud, identity theft, stalking, illegal surveillance, witness intimidation, and child endangerment. And that was just the beginning. Emma's whispered secrets to a patient German shepherd had unlocked a criminal conspiracy that would take years to fully unravel. But for now, the most important fact was simple. The hidden room had been found, the evidence secured, and the man who terrorized a little girl into silence was finally in custody. The truth, buried for so long, was finally in the light. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. on a gray Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after the discovery of David Peterson's surveillance operation. The courthouse was under unprecedented security, metal detectors at every entrance, armed marshals posted throughout the building, and a strict media blackout. What was about to unfold in Courtroom 3B would be one of the most dramatic proceedings in the county's history. Judge Harrison Blackwell entered his chambers at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before the hearing, and sat heavily in his leather chair. In 27 years on the bench, he'd presided over murders, gang trials, organized crime cases, but nothing had prepared him for this. A custody case had morphed into a federal criminal investigation that threatened to expose one of the most disturbing patterns of domestic surveillance and financial fraud the state had ever seen. The gallery was packed by 8:45 a.m. Jennifer Peterson sat in the front row with Maria Santos, her attorney. Jennifer looked like she'd aged 10 years in 1 week, her face drawn, eyes red from crying, but there was something else there too: relief. After years of feeling crazy, of sensing she was being watched but having no proof, the truth had finally validated her instincts. Behind her sat Detective Sarah Matthews, and on the floor beside her chair lay Rex, the German shepherd whose gentle presence had unlocked the truth. The dog wore his official therapy vest, and several people in the courtroom had already approached to thank Sarah for her work. Rex, as always, remained calm and professional, though his eyes tracked every movement in the room. On the opposite side of the courtroom, separated by 3 armed marshals, sat David Peterson. His expensive suit couldn't hide the orange jumpsuit underneath, visible at his wrists and collar. His hands were cuffed in front of him, and ankle monitors tracked his every movement. His attorney, Marcus Reed, sat beside him, but even Reed's usual confident demeanor had crumbled. The evidence was overwhelming, and everyone knew it. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the bailiff's voice rang out. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harrison Blackwell." The judge entered, his expression grave, and took his seat. "Be seated," he commanded, and the courtroom rustled as everyone complied. "Before we begin, I want to make something absolutely clear. This proceeding is being recorded for the court record only. Any unauthorized recording or photography will result in immediate removal and contempt charges. Is that understood?" Murmurs of assent filled the room. "Good." Judge Blackwell adjusted his glasses and opened the thick folder before him. "We are here today for an emergency hearing regarding the case of Peterson v. Peterson, which has now expanded to include criminal charges against the defendant, David Michael Peterson. The state has requested this hearing to present newly discovered evidence that fundamentally alters the nature of these proceedings." He nodded to the prosecution table, where Assistant District Attorney Catherine Walsh sat with Agent Diana Reeves from the FBI. Walsh stood, her bearing military straight, her expression controlled but intense. "Your Honor, over the past 7 days, law enforcement has uncovered evidence of crimes so extensive and disturbing that we felt it necessary to present these findings to the court immediately. With your permission, we'd like to begin by showing the surveillance footage recovered from the defendant's residence." David Peterson shifted in his seat, his jaw clenching. Marcus Reed stood quickly. "Your Honor, I object to." "Overruled," Judge Blackwell said curtly. "Sit down, Mr. Reed. I've reviewed the evidence in chambers and I've determined it's admissible. You'll have your opportunity to respond." Reed sat, his face flushed with anger and frustration. The lights dimmed, and a large screen descended from the ceiling. The courtroom fell silent as the presentation began. The first image showed the hidden room in David's basement, the surveillance hub with its 7 monitors, the computer systems, the filing cabinets. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Several jurors, called in for what everyone knew would eventually be a criminal trial, looked physically ill. This room, Walsh began, her voice steady and clear, was discovered based on information provided by the defendant's 7-year-old daughter, Emma Peterson. The child had been threatened into silence for 6 months, told that if she ever revealed what she'd seen, her mother would be harmed. The screen changed, showing close-up photos of the monitors. Then the image that made the entire courtroom recoil: live surveillance feeds from Jennifer Peterson's home. Kitchen, bedroom, bathroom. Jennifer covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Maria Santos put an arm around her shoulders, steadying her. These cameras, Walsh continued, were hidden throughout Ms. Jennifer Peterson's private residence without her knowledge or consent. The defendant monitored her activities 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for approximately 3 years. We have recovered over 12,000 hours of footage. David stared straight ahead, his expression blank, but a muscle in his jaw twitched. The presentation continued, each revelation more damning than the last. The obsessive logs documenting Jennifer's every move: when she woke up, what she ate, who she called, where she went. The recordings of her most private moments. The notes describing his pleasure at controlling her life without her awareness. But it wasn't just Ms. Peterson, Walsh said, and the screen changed again, showing 6 different women's names and addresses. The defendant had surveillance operations on at least 6 other women, including 2 colleagues from his workplace, a neighbor, and 3 women he dated briefly before his marriage. The courtroom erupted. Judge Blackwell's gavel cracked like a gunshot. "Order! I will have order in this court." The room settled, but the energy had shifted from shock to outrage. Walsh pulled out a remote, and the screen changed to show financial documents. Additionally, we discovered extensive evidence of financial fraud. The defendant systematically stole from his ex-wife's business accounts over a 3-year period, transferring money to offshore accounts through a network of shell companies. Numbers flashed on the screen: transaction records, bank statements, forged signatures. The total at the bottom made people gasp: $3,847,000. $3.8 million, Walsh repeated, letting it sink in. Stolen from Ms. Peterson's business, forcing her to take on debt, nearly bankrupting her, while she had no idea her ex-husband was the cause of her financial struggles. Jennifer was sobbing openly now, her entire body shaking. The magnitude of the betrayal, the surveillance, the theft, the psychological manipulation, was overwhelming. But Walsh wasn't finished. She nodded to Agent Reeves, who stood and approached the bench with a sealed evidence bag. "Your Honor, with your permission, we'd like to play an audio recording recovered from the defendant's computer. This recording was made 6 months ago, 2 days before Emma Peterson stopped speaking." Judge Blackwell nodded grimly. "Proceed." The courtroom went silent as the audio began to play. David's voice, crystal clear, filled the room. "Emma, come here, look at these screens, see. That's Mommy's house. I can see her right now, see her in the kitchen. I can watch her whenever I want. She doesn't even know." A small voice, Emma's voice, responded, "Why do you watch Mommy?" "Because I need to make sure she doesn't do anything stupid. And you need to understand something very important. If you ever tell anyone about this room, about these cameras, about anything you've seen here, something very bad will happen to Mommy. Do you understand?" "What kind of bad thing?" "Let me show you something." There was a pause, then the sound of a video playing, screaming, the crunch of metal, the horrific sounds of a car crash. That's what happens to people who talk to police about things they shouldn't. That's what happened to a woman who tried to tell people about someone's private business. Do you want that to happen to Mommy?" "No," Emma's voice was panicked, terrified. "Then you can never, ever tell anyone what you've seen in this room. Not therapists, not teachers, not judges, not police. If you say one word about this to anyone, Mommy will have an accident just like that. Do you understand me?" "I understand." "Say it." I won't tell anyone, I promise. Please don't hurt Mommy. Good girl, that's my smart girl. Now let's go upstairs, and you're going to forget this conversation ever happened. The audio clicked off. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Jennifer's heartbroken weeping. Several people in the gallery were crying openly. Even some of the marshals had tears in their eyes. Judge Blackwell removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Mr. Peterson, please stand. David stood slowly, his face pale but still defiant. I have reviewed all the evidence presented by the state, Judge Blackwell said, his voice growing stronger. I have read the forensic reports. I have seen the surveillance footage. I have listened to your own voice threatening your 7-year-old daughter. In my 27 years on this bench, I have never seen such a comprehensive, calculated pattern of abuse, manipulation, and criminal behavior. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. The custody case is hereby terminated. Jennifer Peterson is granted full sole custody of Emma Peterson, with no visitation rights whatsoever granted to the defendant. Furthermore, I am remanding you to federal custody without bail pending trial on the following charges: illegal surveillance, stalking, wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering, witness tampering, child endangerment, and violation of federal wiretapping laws. Marcus Reed jumped to his feet. Your Honor, I must protest. My client has rights. Your client, Judge Blackwell said, his voice like ice, terrorized a 7-year-old child into 6 months of silence by threatening to kill her mother. Your client violated the privacy of at least 7 women, stealing millions of dollars while psychologically torturing his ex-wife. Your client's rights are being respected. He'll have a trial, but he will not walk free while awaiting that trial. Marshals, remove the defendant. David Peterson's mask finally cracked. As the marshals moved toward him, he lunged toward Jennifer, his face contorted with rage. You did this. You turned my own daughter against me. The marshals grabbed him, forcing him back. His threats dissolved into incoherent shouting as they dragged him from the courtroom. The heavy doors slammed behind him, and the courtroom remained frozen in stunned silence. Judge Blackwell looked at Jennifer, his expression softening. Ms. Peterson, I cannot imagine what you've endured. This court owes you an apology for not seeing the truth sooner. You and your daughter will have every resource available to help you heal from this trauma. Jennifer could only nod, unable to speak through her tears. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Detective Matthews knelt beside Rex, stroking his head. Good boy, she whispered. You helped catch a monster. Rex's tail wagged once, and he looked up at her with those wise amber eyes that seemed to understand everything. Justice, finally, had been served. 3 weeks passed between the emergency hearing and Emma's scheduled testimony. 3 weeks of intensive therapy, of gentle preparation, of building the courage to speak in front of a room full of strangers. Dr. Patricia Chen had worked with Emma every day, sometimes twice a day, creating a safety plan and practicing techniques to help the child feel grounded if she became overwhelmed. But Emma had one non-negotiable requirement. Rex had to be with her. Not just in the courtroom, actually on the witness stand by her side, where she could touch him if she needed to. Judge Blackwell had granted the unprecedented request without hesitation. If a therapy dog could help this brave child tell her story, then protocol could be adjusted. The morning of Emma's testimony, Jennifer helped her daughter dress in a simple purple dress, Emma's favorite color. They'd gone shopping together for it, Emma's small hand gripping her mother's tightly as they walked through the store, still learning to feel safe again. Emma had started talking at home now, in whispers and short sentences, but Jennifer treasured every single word like diamonds. Are you sure you want to do this, baby? Jennifer asked, kneeling to adjust Emma's collar. You don't have to testify if you're not ready. The prosecutors said they have enough evidence without your testimony. Emma looked at her mother with those serious blue eyes that had seen far too much for a 7-year-old. I want to, she said quietly. Other kids need to know it's okay to tell. Rex helped me tell. Maybe I can help other kids tell too. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears and she pulled Emma into a fierce hug. You're the bravest person I've ever known. I'm so proud of you. The courtroom was configured differently than usual. A comfortable chair had been placed at the witness stand instead of the typical hard wooden seat, and a water bottle sat within easy reach. A box of tissues was strategically positioned nearby. The gallery was restricted to essential personnel only. No media, no curious onlookers. Just the judge, attorneys, court staff, a few victim advocates, and Jennifer, who sat in the front row where Emma could see her. Detective Sarah Matthews entered through a side door at exactly 10:00 a.m. with Rex walking calmly beside her. The German Shepherd's presence immediately changed the energy in the room. His quiet confidence seemed to radiate peace. Sarah led him to the witness stand area and gave him the hand signal to lie down beside the chair. Rex complied immediately, his amber eyes alert but relaxed. Then Emma entered, accompanied by Dr. Chen. The little girl's hand was clutched in the psychologist's palm and her steps were hesitant, uncertain. But when she saw Rex lying patiently by the chair, her face transformed. A small smile, the first real smile many in that courtroom had seen from her, lit up her features. "Hi, Rex," Emma whispered, moving toward the dog. Rex's tail thumped once against the floor in greeting. Judge Blackwell's voice was gentler than anyone had ever heard it. "Good morning, Emma. Thank you for being so brave and coming here today. Do you see your mommy sitting right there in the front row?" Emma nodded, glancing at Jennifer, who smiled encouragingly through her tears. "Your mommy is going to stay right there the whole time where you can see her, and Rex is going to stay right next to you. If you need to take a break at any time, for any reason, you just tell me and we'll stop immediately. Does that sound okay?" "Okay," Emma said softly, climbing into the chair. She immediately reached down to place her hand on Rex's head, and the dog pressed gently against her leg. The prosecutor for David Peterson's criminal trial, Assistant District Attorney Catherine Walsh, approached the stand with a kind smile. She'd spent hours preparing for this moment, knowing that how she questioned Emma could make the difference between a child feeling safe enough to testify and one who shut down completely. "Hi, Emma. My name is Ms. Walsh. We met a few times before, remember?" "I remember," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her fingers were already working through Rex's fur, the repetitive motion clearly calming her. "Emma, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to know that there are no wrong answers. If you don't understand something, just tell me and I'll ask it a different way. And if you need to talk to Rex instead of to me, that's okay too. Rex is very good at listening, isn't he?" For the first time, Emma's voice strengthened slightly. "He's the best listener in the whole world." Several people in the courtroom smiled, despite the gravity of the situation. "Emma, do you know why you're here today?" Walsh asked gently. Emma nodded, her hand still resting on Rex's head. "To tell the truth about Daddy, about the bad things he did." "That's right, and you're very brave for doing that. Can you tell us about the special room in your daddy's house, the one you told Rex about?" Emma was quiet for a moment, her breathing quickening. Rex, sensing her distress, shifted slightly, pressing more firmly against her leg. Emma leaned down, putting her face close to Rex's ear, and whispered something only the dog could hear. Then she sat back up, her expression more resolute. "The room was scary," Emma began. "It was behind a fake door in the basement. Daddy took me there one time. He said it was our secret place, but secrets aren't supposed to make you feel bad, and that room made me feel really, really bad." "What was in the room, Emma?" "Computers, lots of them, and big screens on the wall. 7 screens, I think, maybe 6. I don't remember exactly because I was scared." Emma's voice wavered, but she pressed on. "Daddy showed me the screens, and they showed Mommy's house, Mommy's kitchen and her bedroom and everywhere. He could see Mommy all the time, even when she didn't know." Jennifer stifled a sob in the gallery. and Maria Santos squeezed her hand tightly. "How did that make you feel, Emma, seeing those screens?" "Scared, really scared, because Daddy said." Emma stopped, her breath catching. She leaned down to Rex again, burying her face in his fur for a long moment. When she pulled back, tears were streaming down her cheeks, but she continued. "Daddy said if I ever told anyone about the room, something bad would happen to Mommy. He showed me a video of a car crash, a really bad one with people screaming. He said that's what happens to people who talk to police." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even the court reporter, who'd seen countless disturbing testimonies, had tears in her eyes. Walsh's voice remained steady and gentle. "Is that why you stopped talking, Emma? Because you were trying to protect your mommy?" "Yes," Emma whispered. "I thought if I didn't talk to anybody at all, I couldn't accidentally tell the secret. I thought if I stayed quiet, Mommy would be safe." "That must have been very hard, being quiet for so long." "It was the hardest thing I ever did," Emma said, more tears spilling down her cheeks. "I wanted to tell Mommy so bad. I wanted to tell the nice doctors and the police and everybody. But I was so scared Daddy would hurt Mommy." "Emma, you're doing so well," Walsh said encouragingly. "Can you tell us what changed? Why did you decide to talk to Rex?" Emma looked down at the German shepherd, whose steady amber eyes gazed back at her with infinite patience. "Rex was different. When I saw him, I knew he wouldn't tell Daddy. Dogs can't talk to bad people. Dogs just listen and love you no matter what. So I told Rex everything because I knew he would keep Mommy safe." Sarah Matthews, standing quietly to the side, had to wipe her own eyes. In all her years working with Rex, she'd never been more proud of her partner. Walsh continued, her questions carefully calibrated to get Emma's testimony on record without re-traumatizing her. Emma described the surveillance equipment, the folders full of papers about Mommy, the strange men who visited late at night, the conversations she'd overheard about money and banks. Throughout it all, Emma kept one hand on Rex, drawing strength from his presence. When her voice would start to shake, she'd lean down and whisper to the dog, and somehow she'd find the courage to continue. Defense attorney Marcus Reed's cross-examination was mercifully brief. Judge Blackwell had warned him in chambers that any aggressive questioning of the child would result in immediate contempt charges. Reed asked only a few perfunctory questions, his heart clearly not in it. Even he could see that Emma was telling the truth. After 45 minutes, Walsh approached the bench. "Your Honor, I believe we've covered everything we need from this witness." Judge Blackwell nodded, then looked at Emma with something approaching awe. "Emma, you've done an incredibly brave thing today. Speaking the truth, even when it's scary, is one of the hardest things a person can do. You've helped not just your mommy, but other people too. People who didn't even know they needed help. Do you understand how special that is?" Emma nodded, still holding onto Rex. "You're free to go now. Your mommy is waiting for you." Emma climbed down from the chair, but before she left, she wrapped her arms around Rex's neck, hugging him tightly. "Thank you, Rex," she whispered into his fur. "You saved me and Mommy. You're my hero." Rex's tail wagged, and he gently licked Emma's cheek, making her giggle, the first genuine laugh anyone in that courtroom had heard from her. As Emma ran to Jennifer's arms, the two of them collapsing into tears and embraces, Judge Blackwell made a decision. He would write to the state legislature that evening, proposing mandatory availability of therapy animals for child witnesses in all courtroom proceedings. If a dog named Rex could help one traumatized child find her voice, imagine how many other children might benefit from the same opportunity. Sarah knelt beside Rex, stroking his head as they watched Emma and Jennifer embrace. "You did it again, boy," she whispered. "You saved a life. Actually, you saved several lives." Rex looked up at her with those wise eyes, and for just a moment, Sarah could have sworn the dog understood exactly what he'd accomplished. Emma Peterson's voice had returned, and in finding her voice, she'd found justice, not just for herself, but for all the silent victims who'd been too afraid to speak. The power of trust, of unconditional love, of a gentle dog who listened without judgment, had broken through walls that trained professionals couldn't penetrate. Sometimes, Sarah thought, the most profound breakthroughs come from the simplest connections. A frightened child, a patient dog, and the courage to finally tell the truth. The verdict came down on a cold February morning, exactly 8 months after Emma first whispered her secrets to Rex. David Peterson was found guilty on all 23 counts: illegal surveillance, stalking, wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering, witness tampering, child endangerment, and multiple violations of federal wiretapping laws. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours. When the foreman read the verdict, David showed no emotion. He simply stared straight ahead, his expensive suit pressed and perfect, his face a mask. But Jennifer Peterson, sitting in the gallery with Emma on one side and Maria Santos on the other, finally allowed herself to exhale. 8 months of terror, of looking over her shoulder, of wondering if the nightmare would ever truly end. It was finally over. The sentencing hearing 2 weeks later was swift and decisive. Judge Blackwell sentenced David Peterson to 15 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 10 years. Additionally, he was ordered to pay full restitution to Jennifer and the 6 other women he'd surveilled and defrauded, a total of $4.2 million including damages and legal fees. "Mr. Peterson," Judge Blackwell said, his voice echoing through the packed courtroom, "you use technology and your intelligence not to build or create, but to control, terrorize, and steal. You traumatized your own daughter, violated the privacy of multiple women, and showed absolutely no remorse for your actions. This sentence reflects the severity of your crimes and serves as a message that domestic terrorism, which is what your actions constituted, will not be tolerated in this jurisdiction." David was led away in handcuffs, and this time there was no outburst, just silence. He'd finally been rendered powerless, the control he'd craved for so long stripped away completely. But Emma's story didn't end with David's conviction. In fact, it was just beginning to ripple outward in ways no one could have predicted. Within days of Emma's testimony, news organizations across the country picked up the story. 7-year-old's courage cracks surveillance ring, read one headline. Therapy dog helps child witness break silence, proclaimed another. Despite the court's efforts to protect Emma's identity, enough details leaked that the story became national news. Dr. Patricia Chen was invited to speak at a national conference on child trauma and forensic interviewing. Standing before 300 mental health professionals and legal experts, she presented Emma's case study, with the family's permission, and all identifying details changed. "Traditional interviewing techniques failed completely," Dr. Chen explained, clicking through her presentation slides. "We tried play therapy, anatomical dolls, art therapy, even neutral third-party interviewers. Nothing worked because this child had been so thoroughly terrorized that she couldn't trust any adult. But a therapy dog, an animal with no agenda, no ability to report back to threatening figures, no judgment, created a safe space that we humans simply couldn't provide." The audience was riveted. After her presentation, Dr. Chen was approached by representatives from child advocacy centers in 15 different states, all asking for protocols on implementing therapy animal programs in their jurisdictions. Meanwhile, Detective Sarah Matthews and Rex found themselves at the center of a movement they hadn't intended to start. The American Psychological Association invited them to demonstrate their techniques at a workshop in Washington, D.C. Child welfare organizations wanted to train therapy dogs specifically for legal proceedings. Police departments across the country requested consultations on starting their own therapy animal programs. "I never expected this," Sarah told her supervisor, Lieutenant Morrison, as she reviewed the stack of speaking invitations on her desk. "We just did our job." Morrison smiled. "You did more than your job, Sarah. You and Rex proved that sometimes the most innovative solutions come from thinking outside the traditional box. That little girl's testimony wouldn't have happened without your partner." Rex, lying under Sarah's desk as usual, thumped his tail once as if he understood the compliment. But the most significant ripple effect was happening in the state legislature. Judge Blackwell had made good on his promise, drafting a comprehensive proposal he called Emma's Law, though he was careful to use only the child's first name, protecting her full identity. The proposed legislation required that trained therapy animals be available in all family court and criminal proceedings involving child witnesses under the age of 12. Representative Linda Michaels, a former prosecutor who'd handled hundreds of child abuse cases, championed the bill. She'd read about Emma's case and been moved to tears by the child's courage and the innovative approach that had helped her testify. "For too long, we've asked traumatized children to navigate an adult legal system that terrifies them," Representative Michaels argued during the legislative debate. "We expect them to sit in intimidating courtrooms, face their abusers, and recount the worst moments of their lives, all while maintaining composure and providing clear testimony. It's unreasonable and, frankly, inhumane." Emma's Law provides these vulnerable witnesses with a simple accommodation that can make all the difference: a trained therapy animal to help them feel safe enough to tell the truth. Opposition was minimal but vocal. Some legislators worried about costs, others about precedent and potential allergies in courtrooms. But Representative Michaels came prepared with data from other jurisdictions that had implemented similar programs, showing increased successful prosecutions and reduced trauma for child witnesses. The debate lasted 3 hours, then the vote was called. Emma's Law passed 87-13 in the House and 34-6 in the Senate. Within 6 months, it was signed into law by the governor at a ceremony attended by Jennifer and Emma Peterson, though Emma's face was carefully kept out of all photographs to protect her privacy. At the signing ceremony, the governor knelt down to Emma's level. "Because of your bravery," he told her gently, "hundreds of other children are going to get help when they need to tell their stories. You changed the law, Emma. You made the world a little bit better." Emma, now 8 years old and growing more confident every day, smiled shyly. "Rex helped me," she said quietly. "He's the one who listened first." "Then Rex is a hero too," the governor agreed, reaching over to pat the German shepherd, who sat patiently beside Emma as always during important moments. The media coverage of Emma's Law sparked a national conversation. Op-eds appeared in major newspapers debating the role of therapy animals in legal proceedings. Child advocacy groups began lobbying for federal legislation similar to Emma's Law. Law schools added modules to their curricula about innovative approaches to child witness testimony. Dr. Chen started a training program specifically for therapy dogs and their handlers who wanted to work in legal settings. The curriculum covered trauma-informed care, courtroom protocols, understanding legal proceedings, and recognizing signs of distress in child witnesses. The first graduating class included 12 dogs and their handlers from 8 different states. Rex, at age 7, became something of a celebrity in law enforcement circles, though Sarah was careful to limit his public appearances, knowing that the dog needed downtime and rest to continue doing his important work. But occasionally, she'd bring Rex to conferences or training sessions, where he'd demonstrate the patience and calm presence that had helped Emma find her voice. One particularly moving moment came at a child advocacy center in a neighboring state. Sarah and Rex were visiting to help train a new therapy dog team when a 9-year-old girl, brought in for a forensic interview about alleged abuse, saw Rex and immediately asked, "Is that the dog from the news? The one who helped Emma?" Sarah confirmed it was, and the girl's face lit up. "If Rex could help Emma talk, maybe he can help me too." That afternoon, with Rex lying calmly beside her, the girl disclosed abuse she'd been suffering for 2 years. information she'd been too frightened to share despite multiple previous interview attempts. Another child found safe enough to speak the truth. Another perpetrator who would face justice because a therapy dog created a space where courage could emerge. Back home, Jennifer and Emma were slowly rebuilding their lives. The money David had stolen was being recovered and returned. Jennifer's business was stabilizing. The surveillance cameras had all been found and removed from her home, 17 of them in total, hidden in smoke detectors, electrical outlets, even a picture frame. The house had been professionally swept 3 times to ensure no devices remained. But the invisible scars were harder to address. Jennifer still occasionally found herself looking around her home, searching for hidden cameras that no longer existed. Emma still had nightmares, though they were becoming less frequent. Both were in ongoing therapy, working through the trauma of betrayal and violation. Yet there was healing happening too. Emma had started a blog with her mother's help, carefully anonymous, focused on encouraging other children to speak up when something bad was happening. They called it Rex's Friends, and it featured stories about therapy dogs, advice for kids who felt scared, and resources for parents who suspected their children might be keeping dangerous secrets. The blog received thousands of visits within the first month. Messages poured in from parents, teachers, social workers, and even other children who'd found the courage to speak up after reading Emma's age-appropriate encouragement. "You're helping so many people," Jennifer told Emma one evening as they reviewed messages together. "I'm so proud of the person you're becoming." Emma smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Rex helped me first. Now I want to help other kids the way he helped me." 8 months after the trial, Detective Matthews received a call from the FBI. The evidence seized from David Peterson's surveillance operation had led to a much larger investigation. His business partners, the men Emma had mentioned seeing at late-night meetings, were part of a sophisticated fraud and identity theft ring operating across 5 states. The prosecution of these additional criminals was directly attributable to Emma's initial disclosure. 17 people were ultimately arrested. Over $12 million in stolen assets were recovered, and at least 33 victims, most of whom had no idea they'd been targeted, were identified and notified. One case, one terrified little girl, one patient therapy dog, and the ripples spread outward, touching hundreds of lives, changing laws, inspiring new approaches to justice, and proving that sometimes the smallest voices, when finally heard, can echo the loudest. Emma Peterson never sought to be a hero. She just wanted to protect her mother and feel safe again. But in finding the courage to whisper her secrets to a gentle German shepherd named Rex, she sparked a movement that would help countless other children find their own courage to speak. Justice, it turned out, sometimes arrives on 4 paws and with a wagging tail. 2 years had passed since that gray February morning when Emma Peterson first whispered her secrets to a German shepherd named Rex. 2 years of healing, growing, and learning to trust again. 2 years of transformation that no one could have predicted when a silent 7-year-old entered that courthouse, carrying the weight of terrible secrets. It was a bright Saturday morning in May when Emma, now 9 years old, taller and more confident, sat cross-legged on the grass in Riverside Park, throwing a tennis ball for her golden retriever, Sunny. The dog bounded after it with joyful enthusiasm, his golden coat gleaming in the sunlight, his tail wagging so hard his entire back end wiggled. Jennifer watched from a nearby bench, a genuine smile on her face, something that had been rare 2 years ago but was becoming more common now. She'd rebuilt her business, which was thriving again with all the stolen money recovered and David's sabotage finally ended. More importantly, she'd rebuilt her sense of safety. The house no longer felt like it had invisible eyes watching. She could breathe again. "Sunny, bring it back," Emma called, laughing as the retriever raced back to her, dropping the slobbery ball at her feet. "Good boy." Sunny had joined their family a year ago, adopted from a rescue shelter. Jennifer had been hesitant at first. Was it too soon? Would a dog bring back traumatic memories of the trial? But Dr. Chen had encouraged it, explaining that having a dog of their own could be therapeutic, helping Emma build positive associations with canine companionship. The psychologist had been right. Sonny wasn't a trained therapy dog like Rex. He was goofy and energetic and sometimes knocked things over with his enthusiastic tail. But he was exactly what Emma needed. A friend who loved her unconditionally, who didn't care about her past, who just wanted to play and cuddle and be near her. "Mom, look," Emma called out. "I taught Sonny a new trick." She held up the ball and Sonny sat immediately, his eyes locked on the prize. "Speak," Emma commanded, and Sonny let out a single bark. "Good boy," she threw the ball and he raced after it again. Jennifer's heart swelled. 2 years ago, the word speak would have sent Emma into a panic attack. Now she used it confidently, teaching her dog commands, finding her voice in every sense of the word. Emma had made remarkable progress in therapy. The nightmares still came occasionally, but less frequently now, maybe once a month instead of nightly. She'd started sleeping through the night again. She'd made friends at school, real friends who came over for playdates and birthday parties. She'd even joined the school's drama club, of all things, performing in a production of Annie, where she had 3 whole lines that she delivered with confidence and clarity. Her blog, Rex's Friends, had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. With Jennifer's help moderating comments and content, Emma posted weekly messages of encouragement for children dealing with difficult situations. The blog now had over 50,000 followers and had been featured in parenting magazines and child advocacy publications. Emma had received hundreds of messages from children who'd found the courage to speak up about abuse, bullying, or dangerous secrets after reading her words. "You helped me be brave," one 11-year-old girl had written. "I told my teacher what my uncle was doing and now I'm safe. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Rex." Those messages were why Emma continued writing, even when it was hard to revisit her own experiences. She understood now that her story, painful as it was, had power to help others, power to change things. A familiar figure approached across the park, and Emma's face lit up with pure joy. "Rex," she shouted, jumping to her feet. Detective Sarah Matthews smiled as she walked toward them, Rex trotting calmly at her side. They'd continued to visit Emma and Jennifer every few months, maintaining the connection that had saved Emma's life. Rex was 8 years old now, showing a few gray hairs around his muzzle, but still working as a therapy dog with the same patience and wisdom he'd always possessed. "Hi, Emma," Sarah said warmly. "Hi, Jennifer. We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by." Emma was already on her knees, wrapping her arms around Rex's neck in a familiar embrace. The German shepherd's tail wagged gently, and he leaned into the hug, as patient and loving as ever. Sonny bounded over, curious about this new dog, and after a brief moment of canine introduction, the 2 dogs touched noses in greeting. "Look, Rex," Emma said, pulling back to look at the dog's gentle face. "This is Sonny. He's my dog now. I take care of him just like Sarah takes care of you." Rex's amber eyes seemed to convey approval, and Emma giggled. "How's school going?" Sarah asked, settling onto the grass beside Emma while Jennifer joined them. "Really good," Emma said, her voice strong and clear, such a contrast to the whispered broken sentences of 2 years ago. "I got an A on my science project and I'm going to be in the summer reading program at the library. And guess what? My teacher asked if I wanted to talk to the class about therapy dogs and how they help people. I said yes." Sarah and Jennifer exchanged proud glances. The girl who couldn't speak for 6 months was now volunteering to give presentations. "That's wonderful, Emma," Sarah said. "Rex and I are very proud of you." "I told my class that Rex is a hero," Emma continued, stroking both dogs' heads. "I explained how he helped me tell the truth when I was too scared to talk. My teacher cried a little bit. Then she said we should write thank you letters to therapy dogs. So now Rex has 17 letters from my classmates. Sarah laughed. He does love getting mail. I read all the letters to him. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Sunny and Rex interact. Sunny playful and energetic, Rex calm and tolerant, like a wise older brother indulging a puppy's enthusiasm. Sarah, Jennifer said quietly, I don't think we've ever properly thanked you for everything you and Rex did for us. You gave us our lives back. Sarah shook her head. Rex gave you your daughter's voice back. I was just the person holding the leash. The connection between Emma and Rex, that was pure magic, something I've never quite seen before or since. Have you helped other kids? Emma asked, looking up at Sarah with curiosity. Since me, I mean. We have, Sarah confirmed. Rex has worked with 6 other children in situations similar to yours. Not exactly the same, but cases where traditional interviewing wasn't working. Because of what we learned from you, Emma, we knew how to help those other kids. You taught us that sometimes the best witness interview isn't an interview at all. It's just creating a safe space and letting the child find their own way to the truth. Emma processed this information solemnly. So I helped those kids too, by telling Rex my secrets first. You absolutely did, Sarah assured her. You were the first and you showed us the way. Those other children found their courage because you found yours first. Emma smiled, a deep satisfaction evident on her young face. She'd carried so much guilt during those 6 months of silence. Guilt about not protecting her mother, guilt about being scared, guilt about keeping secrets. But now she could see that her eventual courage had purpose beyond just her own family. I want to work with therapy dogs when I grow up, Emma announced suddenly. Maybe I can train them or take them to help other kids like Rex helped me. Jennifer's eyes welled with tears, happy tears this time. Her daughter was thinking about the future, making plans, dreaming dreams. 2 years ago, Emma had been so trapped in trauma that thinking about tomorrow was impossible. Now she was imagining her adult career. I think you'd be excellent at that, Sarah said sincerely. And when you're old enough, if you still want to, I'd be honored to train you. They spent another hour in the park, throwing balls for the dogs, talking about Emma's blog and school and the continued impact of Emma's law, which had now been adopted in 7 states with pending legislation in 12 more. Sarah shared updates about cases where therapy dogs had made crucial differences in helping traumatized witnesses testify. Emma told stories about Sunny's mischievous adventures, including the time he'd stolen an entire rotisserie chicken off the kitchen counter. As the sun climbed higher and the park grew more crowded with weekend families, Sarah stood to leave. We should get going, she said. Rex has a training session this afternoon with some new handlers. Emma hugged Rex one more time, pressing her face into his fur just like she had that first time 2 years ago. Thank you, Rex, she whispered. Thank you for listening to me when I needed someone. Thank you for being brave enough to help me be brave. Rex licked her cheek gently, and Emma laughed, that clear, joyful sound that meant healing was happening, day by day. As Sarah and Rex walked away across the park, Jennifer pulled Emma close. I'm so proud of you, baby. Look how far you've come. Emma looked up at her mother, her blue eyes clear and unburdened in a way they hadn't been for so long. I'm proud of us, Mommy. We did it together. You, me, Rex, Sarah, everybody. We won. And they had won. Not just the trial, not just the conviction, but something more important. They'd won back their lives, their voices, their future. The trauma would always be part of their story, but it no longer defined them. Emma had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was speaking truth even when you're terrified. She'd learned that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. She'd learned that sometimes the most important listeners aren't human at all, but have 4 paws and a gentle heart. As Emma threw the ball one more time for Sunny, watching him race across the grass with unbridled joy, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, solid, unshakable hope for tomorrow and all the days after. The little girl who'd been silenced by fear had found her voice, and now that voice was helping others find theirs. The trial was over, the nightmare had ended, and the healing, beautiful, messy, imperfect healing continued one day at a time. Emma Peterson was no longer a victim. She was a survivor, an advocate, a young girl with a big heart and an even bigger future ahead of her. And somewhere in the city, a wise German shepherd named Rex continued his work, helping other frightened children find the courage to speak, one gentle moment at a time. The story that began with silence had become a symphony of voices, children finding courage, laws changing, lives transforming. All because one little girl trusted a therapy dog enough to whisper her truth. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change the world. The end.